Good morning, everybody. How are you all? And I thought I would just briefly talk about my top 5 favourite films. I mean, I've mentioned some films on this channel over the last few weeks, and so I thought I would give you a brief rundown of my top 5 favourites. Now, I've seen hundreds and hundreds, probably more than that, films in my life. Every Western, every war film ever made. But these are the ones that mean the most to me in my heart. Now, these are in no order, apart from one. And you're probably going to be a bit surprised by some of the omissions, like Smokey and the Bandit and Raiders of the Lost Ark and stuff like that. I love them. They're personal favourites of mine, but they're not in my top 5. So, From Russia with Love, I've talked about it elsewhere on this channel. My favourite Bond film, my favourite James Bond actor is Sean Connery, my favourite Bond novel. I just think it's a superb Cold War thriller in its own right, as well as a really, really great Bond film. It's got all the action, everything you would expect, all the one-liners and whatnot. I think it's probably the most satisfying to watch of all the Bond films as well, and I just can't praise it enough. I'm not going to go into it in great detail because I've talked about it elsewhere, in the same way that I'm not going to talk about my next choice too much, which is Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, because again, I've talked about it on this channel elsewhere. I'll just put a couple of links in down below for various things, and so that you can go away and have a look at those opinions by people who are far more qualified than me to talk about that stuff. All I will say is Wrath of Khan, I saw the last 20 minutes of it at the cinema when I was about 4 years old. I couldn't remember what the film was, but when I saw it on TV a few years later when I was about 10, I instantly recognised what it was. And I just thought, this is a fantastic movie. I've seen it countless times over the years. I love that film. I love Ricardo Montalban. I love William Shatner. The story is incredibly gripping. Fantastic film all around. Totally brilliant. My next choice would be Where Eagles Dare. Absolutely my favourite Alistair MacLean novel. You could argue that maybe The Last Frontier or Night Without End or HMS Ulysses are better books. You could argue that The Guns of Navarone is a better film, but in terms of pure entertainment, I think Where Eagles Dare just can't be topped. Clint Eastwood, Richard Burton, a whole castle full of Nazis up a mountain that can only be accessed by a cable car. You've got incredible stakes that they've got to meet. You've got a fantastic score by Ron Goodwin, who did the music for Battle of Britain and 633 Squadron. Broadsword calling Danny Boy. The location, it was all filmed on location in Austria, so it's absolutely done for real. There's no computer graphics. The stunt work is amazing. The story keeps you guessing right until the last 5 minutes. It's one of those kind of films, it just builds slowly and slowly and slowly. Some modern audiences will probably get bored because the first hour is basically setting up the plot and getting the characters into the right places and what they need to do to go and find their mission objectives and stuff. Some modern audiences go, this is too slow moving because they're ADHD afflicted, but I've always thoroughly enjoyed that film. I saw it as a kid with my dad and my uncle. They complained vociferously about the accuracy because of course they both served. And they were saying, oh, that you don't hold a gun like that, you don't stab someone to death like that, no, you don't land with a parachute like that, and all that kind of stuff. And I was just laughing, going, are you actually enjoying this film? And they said, oh yeah, it's great, it's just a complete load of old bollocks. I thoroughly love that film. I cannot tell you just how much I recommend it. And if you are interested in Alistair MacLean wrote 29 novels, all of which are incredibly good reads. I don't think that, apart from maybe Desmond Bagley or Jack Higgins, I don't think you could find a more satisfying read. And I'm really sorry for any Bond fans, but Alistair MacLean is an infinitely better writer than Ian Fleming could ever hope to be, because his books, like the films, keep you guessing until the last page. He doesn't just give you the whole story in the first five pages of the book. If you want a really, really good example of MacLean's work, I recommend The Last Frontier. It's a spy thriller from the late 50s. Again, it was turned into a film called Secret Ways. I don't think you could go far wrong with that, because it puts a James Bond film to shame, it really does. But Where Eagles Dare absolutely trounces all over a Bond film. my next choice would be Hard Boiled. This is possibly a bit left field. I love action films, as you probably know. Hard Boiled is spot on my favourite action film. It makes Die Hard look boring, it makes RoboCop look pedestrian, it makes the Terminator look like it's standing still. It's Chow Yun-fat, who made A Better Tomorrow and The Killer. It was made by John Woo, the guy who went on to direct Face Off and Hard Target and stuff like that. It's a Hong Kong action movie from the early 90s. When I tell you that it's a 2-hour movie and literally an hour and a half of it is just gun battles and fights and car chases and all the rest of it, and the first time I saw it, it was on Channel 4. It was part of a season of martial arts films and action films. I was about 14 at the time. They were showing them all on a Friday night about midnight, and I taped them all, and I never heard of it, didn't know what to expect, taped it, and my jaw hit the floor and stayed there for 2 hours. And I called my friends and I said, you need to come over and watch this film because this film is amazing. And they all just sat there going, because they couldn't believe just how much action was crammed into 2 hours, and said, well this kind of makes Sly and Arnie and stuff look kind of boring. And I said, yeah, I didn't know what to expect either, but there you go. Hard Boiled. Chow Yun-fat is the coolest guy that there ever is. He's almost ice cool. You could literally just pour a bag of ice into a sack and you'd have Chow Yun-fat. The action is incredible. The story is actually very, very clever as well. Who's the undercover cop? Who's the mole? Who is not the undercover cop? Again, it's one of those stories that keeps you guessing until the last 5 minutes, which is something I really, really like. But my top choice, my absolute favourite film ever made, is Heat by Michael Mann. Al Pacino, Robert De Niro trying to outfox each other. I'd seen Thief with James Caan. I loved that film. I'd seen Manhunter, Brian Cox as Hannibal Lecter. He's the best Hannibal Lecter, and Manhunter is the best Hannibal Lecter film. Silence of the Lambs, yeah, as much as I love Anthony Hopkins, all he does is all the way through that and ham it up. No, Brian Cox is absolutely terrifying as Hannibal Lecter. But anyway, Heat is based on a true story. There really was a Neil McCauley as a criminal. There really was a Vincent Hanna, although his name was not Vincent Hanna, in Chicago. Some people are going to complain, oh, it's quite a long film. I personally don't mind a long film because you get more immersed in that world and those characters. Michael Mann actually sets out and he basically creates a story for each major character rather than just having two guys who you're just chasing around. I already knew who De Niro and Pacino were because I'd seen Scarface and The Godfather and Goodfellas. Goodfellas is another one of my absolute favourites, and so is Scarface. Godfather was my dad's favourite film. I've always found that film a bit po-faced. I don't mind it, and it takes itself so very, very seriously. But yeah, Heat, a fantastic film. The scene where De Niro and Pacino are just sitting in a coffee shop just talking and getting to know each other, and the verbal jousting, awesome. The gun battle, of course, that was all done for real. Now it'd just be filmed in front of a green screen, it'd look awful. I think that Pacino kind of overplays it, you know, he's, oh, she's got a great ass, you know, don't waste my motherfucking time and stuff like that. He said himself his character was on cocaine and that's why he was overacting and hyped up all the time. But if you watch Al Pacino, he plays that same character in almost every single film he makes, you know, the hoo-ah, hoo-ah, and all that kind of stuff. It gets a little bit wearing at times, but it's okay. De Niro, though, is very, very subtle. He's the master of underplaying rather than overplaying. And you see that especially in Casino, with the underplaying against Joe Pesci, who's going mad. But yeah, I cannot praise Heat highly enough. It's my absolute favourite film. I saw it at the cinema. I was 13. I sneaked in to see a 15 rated film because I looked older than I was. Absolutely loved it. It opened the floodgates for me because I said, oh, I can get away with watching films that I'm not old enough to see. So I saw Broken Arrow and The Rock and Con Air, Face Off, all those kind of films, you name them, I saw them. But yeah, Heat, my absolute top choice. I love that film so much. I will leave this there. And thank you very much for watching. Maybe you want to check some of these films out or some of the books that they're based on. Either way, have a really happy day and a very safe weekend. Ta-da.